We've been talking about different types of sentences. We have talked about commands, where you are telling somebody or somebody is telling you what to do. We have talked about statements, which is just telling you something. And today we're going to talk about, or this week, we're going to talk about questions. And a question is somebody asking something. So let's look at this slide. It tells us a question is a sentence that asks something. A question sometimes begins with a question word. Who, what, when, where, why, and how are question words. For example, how far away is the moon? Why does the moon seem to change shape? So let's look at this picture. So I'm showing you a picture right here. And I've got questions about this picture. Where are these children? What are the kids doing? So each one of these sentences asks a question. And questions also end with a certain type of punctuation, and that is called a question mark. And you can see I'm going to highlight my question mark right there in my sentence. So I've got a question word, where are these children? And it ends with a question mark. When you ask a question or you write a question, you end it with a question mark. And we also talk about when we're reading, we read with expression, and your question marks at the end of sentences are your clues on how you can read that sentence. Your voice changes. You read it with expression. What are the kids doing? You can hear when I read the word what that my voice changes. And so a question mark. So here's our little cartoon question mark. Use when you are asking a question. Okay, so let's look at these sample questions. And our directions tell us to identify the sentences that are questions. So I'm going to read it and I want you to decide, is this a question or not? All right, our first one says, when will the sun set? Is that a question? It is. It has a question word, when, and it's ending with a question mark. And so I'm going to type in that it is a question. All right. Number 2 says, I can see the shapes in the clouds. Is that a question? It's not. It's a statement. It's telling us something. It's telling us that they can see the shapes in the clouds. It also ends with a period. A question is always going to have a question mark at the end. Why do stars twinkle? Is that a question? It is. So it has a question word, why. Oops, I moved my slide. Why is our question word, and it ends in a question mark. So I'm going to identify this one as a question. All right. Number 4, how many planets are there? Is this a question? It is. I have a question word, how, and I have a question mark at the end. So this is asking a question. All right. Number 5, Jimmy sees a falling star. Is this a question? It's not. It's a statement. It's telling us that Jimmy sees a falling star. And it also ends with a period, so there's lots of clues that tell us that this is not a question. Number 6, where is your telescope? Is this a question? It is. It has a question word, where, and it has a question mark. This is a question. All right, so I want you to practice asking somebody with you, whether it's a table marker, a table partner, or somebody helping you do homework. I want you to practice asking them questions. And so I've given you these examples, and I've also got some more over here. Who is near the door? That's a question. Who is a question word. And I'm going to highlight that. Who is near the door? And I have a question mark at the end. That's my punctuation. All right, my other example of a question. What do you see at your desk? So I have a question word, what, and I have a question mark as my punctuation. Here's another example of a question you could ask. What will you eat for lunch? What is my question word? And I have my question mark. Okay, I want you to pause this video and I want you to ask at least 2 questions for somebody that is with you. Now that you've asked those questions, I want you to get out your 1.6.1 questions page. And our little box up here tells us a question is a sentence that asks something. A question ends with a question mark. And here's our example. Can you play? And it has a question mark as the punctuation. And it tells us for our directions to underline the sentences that are questions. So I want you to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I want you to underline the ones that are questions. Remember, you're going to have question words like what, is, where, how, can, things like that. And they also end with question marks. And then it tells us to choose one question from above and add details and write your new question. So how might I do this? Well, I'm going to choose one of my questions, and I'm going to tell you that number 2 is a question. And it asks us, is that the sun? I can rewrite this question by adding a detail to it. Maybe instead of writing, is that the sun, I write, is that the bright sun? I'm going to add a detail. I am adding the detail of bright to my sun. So I want you to pick a question and I want you to change it in some kind of way by adding a detail to it. And when you're done, you're submitting it to your Google Classroom.